Hi guys, I just wanted to give you this little video on the 3 fallacies of language that you go over in Chapter 4, Language and Clarity. Fallacy of equivocation, fallacy of composition, and the fallacy of division. And clarity is exactly what we need when we're dealing with these 3 fallacies, because they are incredibly unclear, as we find out. Essentially what happens when you have a fallacy like this is you have an unjustified conclusion, which becomes, of course, an unjustified belief. Now, what amounts for a justification of our beliefs or justification of our conclusion? We will get into conclusions. We'll get into that as the 6-week session progresses. But we know at this point you at least need logical reasoning. Remember what reasoning is? It's concluding in one thing based on something else. So when you commit a fallacy, you inappropriately conclude. You inappropriately draw a statement. Okay, that makes an assertion about reality. You're doing so in a way that is unfounded. Okay, so let's consider the fallacy of composition first, where you essentially assume of the whole what is true of the parts. And of course, you have the fallacy of division, where you assume of the parts what is true of the whole. Now, you might have to slow down and really process that. And the best way to do that is to go over examples, right? But we want to remember that inside those examples, or behind the example arguments that you have, is a form, okay? And it's the form that allows us to see that fallacy regardless of the content of the argument. So let's look at the form given to you by your text for the fallacy of composition. The parts of group G have features F. Therefore, group G has features F. Okay, you are doing what? You're assuming of the whole what is true of the parts. Okay, fallacy of division. The group G has features F. Therefore, the parts of group G has features F. What are you doing there? Assuming of the parts what is true of the whole. Let's look at one example of the fallacy of division, provided to you by your text. Michigan has the most wins in NCAA football. Therefore, Michigan college students are the most winning players in NCAA history. Now, you might hear that conclusion, you might hear that line of reasoning and go, wait a second, something doesn't sound right. That sounds as though it's guilty of a fallacy. It sounds as though it's committed some poor reasoning there, right? What can you do to break that immediate inference down, or that one premise argument down, and understand exactly where the error exists? You can break it down into its form. You can remove the content from the equation, all right, and recognize that in that Michigan example you have the parts of group G have features F, or I'm sorry, group G has features F. Therefore, the parts of group G have features F. You have the fallacy of division there, okay? All right. So continue on with these examples of those 2 fallacies, and continue on with your studies of those. Really try to put those to memory. Really try to put the forms to memory, okay, so you can see the form embedded in the content while going through different examples, argument examples that are guilty of committing fallacies such as these. Let's look at the fallacy of equivocation, treated on page 138 for you guys. Now, when someone commits the fallacy of equivocation in their argument or their line of reasoning, what they've essentially done is, for one premise, they've used a meaning of a term, right? They've used a term with a specific meaning, okay? And they have used the same term throughout the argument, but they've switched the meanings of the term to suit the conclusion that what usually it seems to happen is that the conclusion that they wanted, okay? Now, you've been given an excellent example here of an argument that's guilty of the fallacy of equivocation. Many Democratic candidates run for office. Republicans claim they believe in democratic ideals. Therefore, Republicans should vote for Democrats. Okay, hold on. Whoa. What would you have there? In our American government situation, you'd have chairs flying across classrooms, right? And people would be getting into these extraordinarily large debates about ideology and etc. But what's the root of the problem here in that argument. What is the real problem with that line of reasoning? Well, it's guilty of the fallacy of equivocation. There's two meanings here of the word Democrat that are being paraded as one, right? You have Democrat, the political party, okay? And then you have Democratic, the political party, okay? And then you have Democratic, the form of government. And it's like, hold on one second, right? You have one word, you have two meanings, okay? You can't, those meanings are not interchangeable, and they ought not to be interchanged to suit the author of an argument. You have to remember another thing with fallacies, well, another thing with arguments, right? You're dealing with arguments, you're dealing with the art of persuasion, right? Now, if you're being persuaded through deceptive means, okay, then you're being persuaded with illogic, right, or unreasonable conclusions, all right? Okay. Well, I hope this video helped with those three fallacies. I hope you guys are enjoying these chapters 3 and 4. I think they're very interesting chapters myself. I'm definitely interested in language and clarity and the use especially of our emotional language, things like that, and arguments, all right? And again, if you have any questions, you can email me personally, or you can put those questions through the discussion board that should engage the entire class, all right? Have a great week, guys.